Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Blackshirt Breakdown. My name is Steve Marik. I'm a staff writer at Inside Nebraska, and he is Jay Foreman, our NFL veteran and former Husker Blackshirt. Jay, we are back, but we are not talking about the 2023 class. We were talking about the Huskers 2024 class because they just snagged their first one of the class in Roger Gradney, a 6'1", 190-pounder out of Altair, Texas. I had to look up Altair, Texas. It's a tiny town in the southeast part of the state. The last consensus, or one of the consensuses done in 2000, they had Altair at 30 people. So he comes from a high school called Rice Consolidated. It's a consolidated high school. And hey, a small town kid, country kid in Texas. A unique background, I would say. He's a 5.73 star rated by Rivals. He's the 70th rated recruit in Texas for the 2024 class. And overall, he's listed as an athlete, the 34th best athlete in the country. So Jay, when you first saw Roger Gradney's name, I had to look him up. I'm sure you had to look him up too, but what are your overall thoughts on him?
Well, first, being from a small town, there's been plenty of players that came to, through Nebraska from small towns in Nebraska. I'm thinking just off the top of my head, Joe Makovica, 8-man and obviously one of the best fullbacks to play. Corey Schlesinger is from Columbus. Columbus is by no means, a metropolis type of city. So I don't have a problem with that. I just find his background very interesting. And when you see him on tape, he's an athlete. I think it just fits the Matt Rhule type of in the coaching staff, under the radar, needs to be developed. He's an athletic kid, still to be from that small of a town to go to a consolidated school, which we see all the time in Nebraska. We're getting state tournaments going. Let you know that for him to be ranked nationally, he must be a pretty good athlete. Now, will there be a learning curve? Most likely, yes, and it might take a while. But I think if he, you could hit more than just a single or a double with this kid, especially with his prowess at returning kicks. And so that's probably something that really appealed to any coaching staff, but particularly Nebraska, is his ability to return kicks, to be effective. And for him, consistently, sophomore and junior year, game in and game out, to be explosive, let he has a knack for it. And some guys are just born to return kicks, and maybe he'll fit that mode. I'm sure he'll start off on defense, and you like his ability to track the ball. If he gets his hands on a couple picks, you got to expect some big returns. And so that's the way they're looking at it. I think they're going to start him off, and just in his wheelhouse. They won't give him too much and let him develop, get him in their weight program and see where it goes. But yeah, it's the first commit in for the 2024 class. They haven't taken any time off, whether, they're in winter conditioning. So they're out still, beating the pavement, looking for guys. And that's what you want from a coaching staff.
So before we get into Roger's video highlights here, so Nebraska is not his only offer. He's got a Texas Tech offer, which again shouldn't shock people because Texas Tech under Joey McGuire, there's a lot of connections between Texas Tech and Nebraska now, obviously, but the Red Raiders are also one of those programs who aren't afraid, who maybe might not look at those star rankings, and they don't really care about that. If they like a guy, they're going to go after a guy. And I think Nebraska is definitely showing that right now with Matt Rhule and Evan Cooper, especially with his evaluation skills. A lot of people love what he's doing in the film room and finding unheralded guys. So a Texas Tech offer for Roger Gradney, but also Texas San Antonio, a really good program down there in Texas.
Really good.
Campbell, an FCS program. He does not have an offer from Houston, Duke, Vanderbilt, but those programs are also very interested too. And who knows what happens, during the camp circuit and his senior year, especially at Altair too. Excuse me. But so as a junior, Roger only played in 5 games, and that was because he had a hip injury. So his junior year was kind of injury riddled. Not a lot of stats, not a lot of great film from his junior year. But so he's having hip surgery, and that's going to keep him off of the track field. And Jay, you mentioned him as an athlete. That's kind of, I think, what Matt Rhule and Evan Cooper are kind of looking at too, what he's doing outside of the football field here. And on the track, he's a 10.88 second 100-meter dash runner. In the 200, he's at 22.44 seconds. He also throws the discus and he's over 44 feet in the triple jump. So like you said,
Right.
Jay, an athlete. And that's exactly
Right.
what Matt Rhule is wanting to pump into the program and develop these guys.
Yeah, you mentioned Texas Tech before. So when you think about Texas Tech, what they've done, they've made a pretty good living off of getting guys, developing them. Jordan Brooks, who's probably one of the top tacklers in the NFL, came from Texas Tech, a linebacker. Texas Tech has a top 15 pick potentially as an outside rusher. So their ability to see guys, develop them, and project where they're going to be 2 or 3 years down the road. Now, obviously, there's a Texas Tech, connection, obviously, with our, McGuire, our receiver coach and the head coach. And so they probably started to get on the radar of the head coach at Texas Tech and the younger, obviously, son about his sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
His junior year, he got hurt. He has a hip injury. And so I think that's something that Nebraska is, well aware of. But then also, it's a good time for them to develop a relationship and understand that we believe in you and what you're going to be in the future. So now we're going to make a offer and a commitment to you that's going, both ways, and be hands-on maybe in his rehab process. So maybe being off the track, track and field will be good for him on the field. So then he can kind of catch up with as far as that learning curve and really try to have a dominant senior year, give him momentum coming to Nebraska and then being able to hopefully make an impact sooner than later. So, he's an athlete and that's what you want. I think the more athletes that you get on campus, I always say that guys, what you play in high school most likely might not be what you play in college, and be open to it. There's some great players that have came to Nebraska that came in on the offensive side of the ball, ended up on the defensive side of the ball and vice versa. There's a lot of quarterbacks that came in that end up playing, other positions or other positions on the other side of the ball and end up being pretty successful. And I'm sure Matt Rhule has made a pretty good living of doing that and projecting guys. And so, he's just a guy to see what he can do and bring him up here. And it'll be interesting to see how his future works out.
Okay, last thing before we get into his highlights. As a sophomore, when he was fully healthy, played all the games at Altair. As a sophomore on the varsity, he scored 7 total touchdowns in different ways too. 3 of them, he returned 3 kickoffs for a touchdown, 1 punt return for a touchdown. He rushed for a touchdown, and he also caught 2 touchdowns. So again, an athlete does a lot of different things. And again, those track times at 6'1", 190 pounds, I think we're cooking with fish oil with that. So let's go to the video highlights now. And again, these are all from his junior season. So look, guys, you're going to see a lot of kickoff return turns here, and it's fun just to watch this guy see what he can do with the ball in his hands. But his elusiveness, I think, is pretty good. And again, a bigger guy, and once he gets those long strides going, he's getting separation, I think, which is what you want to see.
Yeah, so you're seeing his track speed here, more or less when the 200-meter speed, when he gets going and leaves guys in the dust. And, for being in such a small area, so what you have to also project is what does he have around him as far as to get him the ball on the offensive side of the ball or any type of plays on offense. But you see this play right here. There is no fear when he gets it, right? And so I'm sure that, these coaches know that teams will be keying on him. So, if they score, they have to kick the ball off, right? And so you see right here, once he gets to the sidelines, what do I say? Once you get up the sidelines, make one guy miss, that's where explosive plays go. And you see that he is outrunning any type of angles that these guys have, the ability to try to stop him from scoring a touchdown. So I like right here, he tracks the ball pretty good, sees it, so you can project a little bit to defense, makes a couple of guys miss, and he makes the kicker miss. You should never let this guy right here tackle you. But right here, the guys in the white jerseys could have just, done themselves a favor and just started to get ready for a PAT field goal. So you see, and now we're on the next play here, right? And so, again, a kickoff return, the best way to get your best players on, the ball is if they score or to start the game or half is to give them the ball. You like the athletic ability to have something else in his toolbox as far as jumping over a would-be tackler. But once he gets a crease, he is gone. And, he's a long 6'6" guy, so you got long legs, powerful. You can see right here. So as you're watching him, people are like, oh, he doesn't look that fast, right? Homeboy is fast right here because those long strides, if you look at the yards that he's gaining as he's starting to get faster, he is eating up turf. And right about here, he's gone. And I know, look, everybody's like the competition and all that. he can only play against who he can play against.
Mhm.
For him to be ranked not only in Texas, but nationally lets you know what type of athlete he is.
Yeah, and I think his classification in Texas, what he plays in Rice Consolidated, it's 3A, which
Right.
Jay, Texas, large state, a lot of schools, a lot of classifications, but it's on the lower end of the
Sure.
classification.
It's probably about a class B, lower class A here. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, again, there's not that much big a difference of what you're seeing on film here than what you'll see on a Friday night, in Nebraska. And so again, a short kick, ability to field the kicks right there. You should see a little bit of a power here to run through some tackles and some vision, cut back against the grain. And you see his buddy, right? It's a touchdown. Look, what I understand, when we're looking at this, you're looking at, okay, these guys aren't very big, but the ability to continue to return kicks for touchdowns can't go unnoticed. And I don't care if you're in Class B, Class C, 3A, 4A. Would he have this amount of production at 6A in Texas? Most likely not. But would he have returned a few for a touchdown? Yes, he would, because when you look at his vision with the blocking, the ability to, outrun obviously would-be tacklers, but to break tackles and to be fearless and to catch it. And he knows to when to hit it, where to hit it, as far as the creases in it, as far as returning kicks. And so he's a pretty effective player, and you see him right here on special teams, right? This is probably that really bodes well for area. You're looking for football players, right? He's an athlete. He wants to make an impact. Probably the rosters are very small. So look, he's a Division I recruit, first guy down, as he should be, probably fastest guy on the team, makes a tackle inside the 20. When you look at what he can provide for you as a spark, right? What do you start every game with, Steve? Special team. Kickoff or kickoff return. What do you start every half with? Kickoff or kickoff return. You want a guy that's big, fast, strong. Being 6 foot 195, 6'1", 195, his size and his ability to create havoc on special teams with his speed is already there, because he's big enough. And trust me, from experience, blocking a guy that's a hybrid, anywhere from 195 to 215, 220 is the hardest thing for a frontline blocker like myself on kickoff to do. And so that's where you're seeing the athlete tag come in, right? Kickoff return, receiver. Now we're seeing him right here play a little bit of defensive back. I don't know what type of coverage this is, but as he's playing corner to the wide side, he's actually playing more of a safety, safety position. But I like it right there, using his hands to get off the block right there. So that's showing his ability to be a football player. You shed him right there, get in there, and he does a little bit of a roll tackle right there. So he's a willing tackler. So you don't see him hesitate. I call it being a tiptoe burglar, when you want to go up there and tiptoe and you're kind of deciding whether you want to hit right now. Once he recognizes the play, obviously he's holding the edge right there. He gets off the would-be blocker there, and then he gets up in the mix, and we call it jumping into the cold water, and he has no hesitation. So this is what they're is appealing to, obviously, Evan Cooper and Matt Rhule, Tony White, and those guys, and obviously Coach Foley on the special teams is excited as well. Look, I'm gonna tell you one thing about coaches: they like size and they like speed. They generally think they're confident enough to develop anybody that has a ton of potential. He has it. He's a diamond in the rough, and I guess you could say a diamond in a country field, considering where he's from in Texas. Trust me, it's close to Houston. I kind of know the area, but it's like an area you got to make sure you got 3/4 of tanks of gas, because you don't know if they're going to have gas at the gas stations there, let alone if they have the ability to take some debit or credit cards. And so, look, where he's from doesn't mean that he can't play football, right? And so, look, people probably say, well, why didn't he go to a bigger school? Well, look, you don't know the circumstances for him to be able to go another 45 miles. It's not like Lincoln, where you could go right across the city to another high school, right? Or even to Omaha. You got to think the next step up to, say, even 4 or 5A might be an hour and a half. So really, might not be advantageous for him to go from a consolidated school, because if the fact that he's at a consolidated school lets you know there's not a lot of schools around in the area, so they have to consolidate 3 different towns or 4 different towns. So what he's done is put himself on the map, one, through track, right? So people have known that he played football, but saw him running on the track and field, good time. So you can't deny that, right? That's one thing that you can't deny, is his speed and his track times. Then you see it correlate to him being a kickoff returner, kickoff coverage. You see him in his sophomore year running the ball, catching the ball. So what you need now is, one, for him to be healthy, two, to have a good senior year. And the senior year, obviously with the commitment to Nebraska, is going to allow him to really focus on getting better at the things that maybe Coach Cooper, Coach Rhule, Coach White, and the whole staff, Coach Foley, want him to be, maybe work on his senior year. So when he gets to Nebraska, whether he's an early enrollee or just gets in there before fall camp, that he's ready to go. And so, being the first commit, that also, brings a little bit of a highlight too. But for him, he's just right in the wheelhouse of what Matt Rhule has done at Temple and Baylor, and I'm sure that he's talked to some coaches that played against him to get some background on him. And so I'm sure that they feel very confident in the offer that they originally offered him, and then also accepting the commit or the commitment also is big as well.
Yeah, offered Sunday, last Sunday, and he committed Monday night.
Right.
So
Yeah.
He didn't waste any time.
Hey,
So
man,
yeah, that was some good stuff with Roger.
Steve, you know what I call that, man? That's like when the first time you got to ask somebody to prom, you want to make sure you got to ask all of her friends and all that to make sure that she's saying yes.
Yeah.
So that it probably was a good feel. And look, we had Cali, Nebraska with Mike Riley, which was somewhat real, but not really into fruition. You know what I'm saying? As far as the amount of commitments and the amount of energy built there. Matt Rhule in Texas, that's what he's obviously hanging his hat on, and they believe in it. Now, obviously he's also is going to do a good job of looking at guys around here as well. So it's not Texas or bust, but he's trying to get some guys in here that are, big athletes, track athletes, have football, or actually they're football players with track and field backgrounds, and then develop them into superior football players. So we'll see what happens. And again, he's a guy that I'm sure he's a good kid. I think his grades are pretty good. I think when I read up on him, he's a hard worker because he has to work even harder being out there. You got to think. I just imagine when we first thought about doing this video, it's the type of things that he would have to do in order to compete, with other bigger school kids when he gets to track and field, or when he does a 7-on-7 camp or a camp, to keep himself in somewhat of competitive shape.
Yeah.
And whether it was going out and finding drills on YouTube, and then probably being out there by himself. And so you got to give him a lot of credit that he's obviously taken upon himself to make him into a appealing athlete. And I know we talked about other teams looking at him before. I'm sure they'll start to really look at him now since Nebraska has offered him. But you know what? The Nebraska feels fortunate that he was able to commit in less than 24 hours. And so it's a relationship that, that they'll continue to, foster to make sure that, obviously, come signing day that he'll be ready to go.
His senior year is going to be really interesting. Just once he gets healthy, it'll be really interesting to see what he does on the field, what other kind of offers come at him, and what happens from there. But one thing I wanted to ask you, Jay, before we get out of here was, so with Tony White and his 3-3-5 defense, obviously, at times, most of the time, there's going to be that fifth defensive back out there, kind of a bigger bodied hybrid safety linebacker body type. With Roger Gradney, do you see a potential there of him just developing into a safety, or maybe putting on some pounds and some good pounds, and maybe developing into an inside linebacker or something like that, the rover position, which I am very, very interested in. Just what are your thoughts on Roger Gradney, just, I guess, developing into something that could be one of those maybe 5 defensive backs in the Tony White system?
Yeah, I think, right away I looked safety right off the get-go. And then I could see him, lifting and eating himself and develop himself into a rover, right? And so you're kind of a tweener. Let's call it the tweener position. Yep. And then I could see him possibly being a linebacker. I mean, look, I was an athlete coming out of my high school. Didn't play much defense because they, obviously needed me on offense. And, I played safety, never played linebacker before. Start getting 3 square meals and start getting in a squat rack. And next thing you know, I'm an outside linebacker type of almost kind of rover, where you're, 210, 205, 210, 206 to be, matter of fact, correctly. That was my height weight then. And I ended up starting. And then next thing you know, I continued along the process. I fell in love with it and found a niche in it. And I end up at, inside linebacker, and the rest is history. So, look, football players find a way to on the defensive side of the ball, football players find a way to get to the ball, right? And that's what you want. Now, a really good football player needs to be open to any and everything. And he has a ton of potential. He certainly, can run. He can jump. You've seen that. He's a good athlete. You know what I mean? He's a great athlete. And so at the end of the day, wherever he fits, I think these guys the coaches are going to be open. I'm assuming so. And so if the player's open, I think it's always going to work out. So all three, I would rather come in and have an option to play safety, rover, and linebacker versus saying, you know what, he can only play corner. Because there could be 6 corners and you never get on the field. But when there's 3 positions, you actually can do more. And I always tell kids that ask me about, making the transition from high school to college, the more that you can do and the more that will get you on the field faster than later. And once you're on the field, you make plays, it's going to be very, very hard to get you off the field.
You mentioned Matt Rhule being open to position switches. He did a lot of that at Temple and Baylor. The thing that the one that pops into my head is Hassan Reddick coming to Temple as a walk-on DB safety. And now look at him in the NFL as one of the premier edge rushers getting after quarterbacks. So really good stuff. So Jay, thank you so much for joining me again. That was a Blackshirt breakdown for the first member of the Huskers 2024 class, Roger Gradney out of Texas. 6 Texans in the 2023 class, 1 so far in the 2024. Roger will not be the last Texan in the 2024 class for sure. But I am Steve Marik. He is Jay Foreman, and we will be back next time. Thanks, guys.